Hey guys, it's Brickman117. Welcome back to the channel and part 5 of my latest Ultimate build. If you're unfamiliar with this series, it's where I take a stock set produced by Construx for the Halo line and give it the ultimate treatment by combining many of these sets along with additional parts to create the ultimate version of that set. Past creations include the Ultimate Pelican Dropship, the Ultimate Assault on High Ground and the Ultimate Warthog. If you haven't seen any of those videos and you'd like to catch up, you'll find out just about everything you need to know by visiting my channel and exploring the playlist section. For my current build, I'm creating the Ultimate Banished AA gun, as featured in the Defense Point Showdown set. So it's been a few weeks since part 4, and for good reason. Part 5 very nearly broke me, which I'll elaborate more on shortly when we enter the speed build. But the good news is I managed to persevere, I got there, and I think the end result is incredibly pleasing. It's actually turned out better than I originally hoped, so hopefully you guys will agree too. Just before we jump into the time-lapse, I wanted to show you some footage I took to try and help explain the frustrations and complications I had with this part of the build. As you can see here, I've got the main body of the gun and the front leg all set up on the turntable. This was to try and get the levels correct for extending the rear legs out of the back of the main body. This already presented a problem. The angle of the front leg was wrong, so I had to modify all 3 legs to make them the correct angle. Once I'd done that, I was able to then offer up one of the legs at the back, as you can see, set up on some stilts to try and give me an idea of how I was going to connect it. Now the back leg has got the silver Technic pieces, which had to be changed out for red ones at the front because the silver ones were just too long, but that was an early day part 1 part 2 exercise there. So once I'd changed those for the red Technic pieces, that gave me the right distance jotting out. But this is where the real headaches began. I realised that the angles I was dealing with were mind-bogglingly complicated and really difficult to deal with, which caused me no ends of frustration. I did eventually, however, come up with this setup here, which is just a photo. I wasn't time-lapsing at this point, it was too frustrating, but you can see from this photo I had to put an awful lot of strengthening bars and different pieces in across the base of those builds just to try and give it half a chance of being able to handle its own weight. And at this point I was still very unsure whether it would even handle its own weight before the actual gun went on top, but this was the absolute best I can come up with. Once I'd resolved this area and got to this point in the build, it started to go a little bit easier. But you can see by these pictures that I've taken, at this point I've got the angles nailed and they're all locked into that back wall of the main body of the gun. Now that back wall is going to be tied into the front wall eventually, just before I do the actual main gun section. So I'm confident at this point I've got it as strong as I'm able to make it. And when you look at this picture from above, this picture was all I needed to inspire me to continue, because I'm sure you'll agree at this point the build's really starting to come together. So this really inspired me to just crack on and try and figure out how to get these back housings built to accommodate these 2 legs, because obviously at the moment it looks pretty ugly. So you can see in this video I've managed to create the outer wall of the legs, which I'm relatively pleased with. Creating that angle, which you can't really see on this camera angle, was very difficult, but as I pan the camera around you can see those awkward angles of those walls. Trying to make them seam together was very, very difficult, but I got there in the end. I couldn't just copy the front leg because this rear leg had to have a completely different design for a whole number of reasons. So as we pan up, you can see there's a heck of a lot of awkward angles, studs in all the wrong places, and I'm trying to make this strong, which is really difficult when you're dealing with those angles. So now that I've got the outer walls happy and I've got the dimensions right, it was time to move on to the inner walls, and that's where I decided to hit the time-lapse button and show you guys a little bit of building. Unfortunately, I experienced a bit of a time-lapse fail there, guys, so you missed a bit of the end part of that build, but as you can see, we are done, and I am very pleased with the outcome, which I'll show you shortly. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you guys how much carnage this has created. There's just parts everywhere. So before I can give you guys a real good look around at what I've created, I just want to show you all the mess. So I'm going to basically resort the desk, put all the parts away, ready for part 6. And then I'm going to see if I can remove that turntable from underneath the main body for the moment of truth to see if it can hold its own weight. And there you have it, guys. One Mega Construx giant tripod supporting its own weight. You have no idea how satisfied I am that this has actually worked. Whether it would be able to handle the weight of the gun on top as well, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. So obviously got a long way to go. The next part of the build I think will actually be the gun, or at least the surrounding for the gun to be able to mount onto. And then we're going to have to put the bits underneath that give it a bit more bulk to the main body. And then after that we'll move on to the stilts and the power cells that go on the end of each leg. Taking a look from above, you can see it's really coming together. I'm so pleased with this MOC, and this was something that I did more for you guys than myself. I wasn't overly keen to do this build, but now that I have, I think it might possibly end up being one of my favourite ultimate builds. And we haven't even got onto the gun section of the build yet. Must apologise for the shaky camera work. I'm just holding my phone, and this thing's so huge now it barely fits on the table, so trying to film it isn't the easiest thing. I'm going to end this video out by putting a few sets alongside it just to give you a size comparison and maybe some figures. Before we do that, I just want to show you some of the detailing I've done to the back end of these legs, or the housings for the legs. Now, you have to keep in mind at the time of making this, we haven't seen the back end of these guns, so we've got no idea what's around here. But I didn't want to just create plain boring old walls. I want to try and keep the build interesting for myself, so I use creative license to put a bit of detailing around here, which I see as some sort of exhaust vents for those rear legs. And I feel it really makes the back end of the MOC a lot more interesting than it would have been with just some plain old boring grey walls. So let's take a look how big this thing is alongside some of the official Mega Construx Halo Infinite line sets. So I think that confirms it then. It's big. And that's part 5 done. So don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you next time.